Today, guys, we are doing an off-road test to see how good the unreleased at the moment Canis Terminus is at off-roading. We've done it before with many other vehicles, and we're going to see how good it is today. We're going to start off by doing a Mount Chiliad climb, and then afterwards a little suspension test along with how good it is at going over objects. So I hope you go on to enjoy the video. We're going to compare it to some of the best off-roading vehicles in the game, and with that said, let's jump into things, starting off with the Mount Chiliad climb. All four vehicles start off in the exact same spot and launch and start to drive up the mountain. Now there's one thing you're going to notice between the Terminus and the Camacho versus the Draugr and the Desert Raid is the camera angle that you get to see, I guess, for the Terminus and the Camacho is much broader. You're able to see a lot more on your screen, and all of these were shot using the exact same camera mode. I didn't change that whatsoever, but you're able to see a lot more around you, which is really beneficial when off-roading. Now, when it gets near the end of the race, it's harder to see exactly where you're going if you're using the Desert Raid or the Draugr. But the Draugr manages to finish in first place, then with the Terminus and the Camacho finishing pretty much in the exact same time, and the Desert Raid coming in last place. So when it comes to actually driving up a mountain, the Terminus isn't all that bad. It ties with the Camacho, one of the best off-roaders in the game and something that I used to off-road all the time. Now, obviously, the Camacho is way cheaper, costing only like 350 grand, and the Terminus is going to cost just under $2 million. But this isn't the only test we're going to be performing. We're going to start our suspension test now, which will really show the capabilities of how the body of the vehicle reacts to going over objects that are in the way of them when you're off-roading. And hopefully this will help you make the ultimate decision of what vehicle you want to use when off-roading, because all of the vehicles are actually fairly decent, but there is one that will stand out, and you will see why in just a couple of seconds. But anyways, when it comes to the Mount Chiliad climb, if that's all you want to do when you're off-roading, the Terminus is not too bad. So here's what the next test looks like. We have 1 log, and then we have 2. And then we have 3, and then we have 4, and we're going to see if the vehicles are able to make their way over those objects. And then here we have a bunch of logs lined up like that, and a bunch of logs lined up like this. And we're just going to be taking a look at how the body of the vehicle reacts to going over different surfaces like that, I guess. And you'll definitely see a clear difference between all of the vehicles, and like I said, one of them will stand out a lot, and you will see why. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump inside the first vehicle, which of course is going to be the Terminus, and see how it does on this test. So going over 1 log, that's simple. Every one of these vehicles should be able to do that. Going over 2 logs, had a little bit of trouble there, and then going into 3 logs, it just can't get over it. It's not going to happen. So that's pretty much the end of the Terminus here, but there is still the suspension test. Now here, everybody's going to have their own opinions, so you will be the ultimate judge in the end, and just take a look at how the body reacts to going over these objects that are in the way. Now for me personally, I think the Terminus did okay. At this second part right here, though, it does move a lot. The body of the vehicle is shaking like crazy. Going over this, you see a little bit of wiggling, but honestly, it's not too bad whatsoever. And then we jump inside the Camacho. Going over 1 log, no problem. Going over 2 logs, 0 problems at all. And then we go to 3 logs, and it is unable to get over that either. Now that one is obviously a bit harder, and by the way, the suspension is also set to stock for all of these vehicles just to make it a bit easier to go over those objects. And then when we go to the suspension test, you'll see the Camacho also fares pretty damn well. The body of the vehicle barely moves going over that first part. The second part, it definitely did shake a bit, but when I was driving it, I was fully in control. The one thing with the Camacho is you have insane control of the vehicle at pretty much all times, which is one of the reasons why I love using that thing for off-roading. It's one of my personal favorites, and it's pretty great at what it does, plus it is dirt cheap. But when it comes to this test, it's honestly not too bad and fared pretty much the exact same as the Terminus. The only thing I could say is it did have less trouble going over that second set of logs compared to the Terminus. And then we have the Draugr going over 1, no issues. Going over 2, no issues. 3, it's just unable to get over it. It sucks. It happens to a lot of vehicles, but like I said, one vehicle will stand out, and I mean, you could probably guess it is going to be the Desert Raid. That thing is an absolute beast. But either way, when it comes to going over the logs that are on the road, I honestly feel like the Draugr did somewhat of the best on all of them, even though it did have a lot of shaking and wiggling on the second set of logs right there. I felt like the suspension was pretty much immaculate on it. It was very, very easy to get over, obviously, but when it came to just control and how the vehicle felt while going over it, it felt pretty perfect to me. So far, I feel like this thing is in the lead right now on this test, but like I said, let's take a look at the Desert Raid. So here's the Desert Raid going over 1 log, and then it goes over 2 with no problems, And then we get to 3, runs into a bit of trouble, but manages to get over it. And then 4, I'm like, yeah, it could definitely get over this. It just pops its front wheels up and goes straight over all 4 of those logs. And then when it comes to the suspension test, once again, pretty decent on the first part, and the second part, the body barely moves. So I have to say, when it comes to this test specifically, the Desert Raid absolutely blew all the other vehicles out of the water when it comes to literally every single one of the stages of this test. So if you're mainly looking at going over rough terrain, the Desert Raid or the Trophy Truck will be your best options. But when it came to the Mount Chiliad climb, the Desert Raid did come in last place, so it depends really what you're looking for from an off-roading vehicle. When it came to the test that we just did though, I wouldn't say the Terminus came in last, because it did okay. But like I said, you guys are going to have to be your own judges, I guess, when it comes to the suspension of the vehicles. In terms of the suspension, I feel like it wasn't the greatest compared to the Camacho and the Draugr in terms of control, and even when just driving it off-road, I felt like I had the least control of the vehicle compared to all of the other ones, which definitely makes a big difference. Either way though, when it comes to actual off-roading, like driving up Mount Chiliad, it's not too bad. It did come in second place and literally tie with the Camacho, which definitely shows how good its capabilities are. And it also has a great camera angle, as you guys saw from the clip. You're able to just see a lot more of your surroundings compared to the Trophy Truck and the Draugr, which also says something. Of course, the price is fairly high, and when you really look at it, it kind of ties with the Camacho. The Draugr came in first for the Mount Chiliad climb, and then the Terminus, Camacho pretty much tied for second place. When it came to the second test, the Desert Raid blew all the other cars out of the water, and it kind of performed the same as the Camacho. Like I said, I did feel like I had the least control of the vehicle when doing that test, so that also says something. But if I had to pick a vehicle to just take off-roading, this thing is pretty much the same as the Camacho in my opinion. The main difference is the price, that it's almost 7 times more expensive than the Camacho. But of course, sometimes you're just not going to want to use it for off-roading. It's a beautiful Jeep. We've been waiting a while to have a nice modern-looking Jeep with some cool upgrades in GTA Online. So if you don't plan on taking it off-roading, obviously just buy it and make it look cool, because it has tons of awesome modifications. But if you do plan on taking it off-roading, I have to say it's not the worst thing in the world compared to the best off-roaders in the game. The one thing you'll just watch out for is the control, and you'll notice that when you do take it off-roading, or if you try out any of the other vehicles in this video, you'll see that you just have a little bit less control when going off-road. But like I said, you guys are going to be the ultimate judges at the end when it came to that second test in terms of suspension. You'll be the ultimate decider. But either way, I still think it's pretty decent, and I'd say out of all of the vehicles in this video, it is tied for third place. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and with that said, I will catch you guys in the next one.